There we go. How's everyone doing?
Doing well today.
What's going on?
Welcome back to Beyond the Forecast.
Full house.
Yes. And we have Don Slater on the show this week.
This is going on the internet, right? So it's not real.
Just excited Don Slater's in the house.
Don's
And we got
here.
a special guest as well, senior producer Bob Bennett in the house.
Hello,
who
everybody.
Put together this incredible Tropic special that we're here to preview.
We all did it.
We all did
done
it. We all did it. And of course, Brian Michigan not here, Jeremy Wheeler not here. Can't fit all of us in the studio. We can only have
Big
we
part
only
of the
four-
Hurricane
we only have
special
four-
as well.
4 cameras.
So you can see the Tracking the Tropics special on the WAVY Plus app. If you're wondering, you can find it on demand at any time as we go forward. So as we go into the rest of the month of May, into hurricane season, June and beyond, you can find that. It's a great special because we talk about a lot of different topics, from the history of storms in our area to the prediction for this hurricane season to models to beach erosion and storm surge.
Communication, preparedness.
And it's not just like, this is boring. No, it's actually, it was really cool to watch. It was fun to watch.
We had some fun doing it, and I say that under quotations, right? Because it was enjoyable.
It was
Well,
absolutely.
who didn't have fun?
It was a great podcast.
But yeah, it's enjoyable to do that, especially when we get to put things together and kind of see how everybody puts them together too.
Yeah, and I think we're just going to start off with the history part because
Yeah, why not?
When I was sitting here watching this piece, because I didn't watch anyone else's, I kind of just saw the general kind of synopsis of what everyone's doing. But when I sat down and watched, Don, your piece was really fun to watch with the history because it's so fascinating how different areas in Hampton Roads have formed or across North Carolina, how those land masses have changed because of past storms.
Yeah, past storms, and we think of past storms in our memory or in contemporary history, and our history goes back to about 1933 in terms of looking at the biggest storms. And 1933 was the biggest storm when we had a storm tide of around 10 feet. So you think of Isabel, which was what, 7.8, I believe?
Yep.
And that was big, and that lasted all day long. Well, you think back to 1933, and none of us can, but our grandparents and great-grandparents certainly could, because, again, that 1933 storm was way above average. There's Isabel below that. So, again, you think of those, and those were historic storms. But you go way back in history, and we go back into the 16 and 1700s and the 1800s, and we're talking about 12 feet storm tides. So storm tides that are just ridiculously high. I mean, just unbelievable compared to what they are to those storm tides of recent history.
And ones that shaped the coastline, created inlets, created Willoughby Split, changed the way the Outer Banks are lined up, and all that.
But
kind
the
of
thing
stuff.
about that is, statistically, they don't happen that often.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't seen one like that in 400 years. In some cases, where we've seen a 12-foot or 15-foot storm tide. But statistically, they happen.
Yeah.
So if they happen then, they can happen now. So you've got to be aware of that.
The best part is that the home video that you took in 1667 was fantastic.
It was there.
So it's in the show.
Yes. I'm wearing a tri-corner hat and a wig.
Didn't you interview someone
I
for
was just about to say that.
a past hurricane special or piece that you did many years ago, let's say 20, 30 years
was
ago, from the 33 hurricane?
It was the
Didn't you interview
33
someone?
hurricane.
Yeah,
It was the 33
I
hurricane.
interviewed. I remember I interviewed a woman who was a child, but who remembered well what the 1933 storm was, and how it flooded. Ocean View was the big resort strip at the time. There was no real Virginia Beach resort strip. There was a hotel out there and some structures out in Virginia Beach. But the big resort strip was at Ocean View. And that 1933 storm, the danger of that one was that of course, the dunes had been bulldozed. At Ocean View, because everybody wants a nice view of the water. Well, the first line of cabins, and I'll just do it this way, the first line of cabins got knocked down by the surf. you think of the rise in tidal height, but then you've got waves on top of it. You think of what water weighs. If you pick up like a trash can full of water, that's extremely heavy. Now think of 12, 15-foot waves on top of that rise in tidal height, and that knocks down that first row of cabins, cottages along Ocean View.
I think we actually have a couple images of that.
There are.
Show.
Yeah.
Well,
there
the
are
thing
some
about
images.
it was that for Ocean View in 1933, the second line of cabins, not even a street between them, just a yard between them, that second line of cabins basically got knocked down as well, not only from the waves, but from the debris from the first line of cabins. So those were basically destroyed too. And then finally the waves dissipated by the third line of cabins, and they got damaged badly, but they didn't get knocked out.
Wow.
So there are all kinds
yeah.
of things to think of in terms of structures and in terms of people and in terms of individual storms.
Well,
Each storm is different.
I think of a title like that too. It's like now that you look at all the lines of homes that are there now,
Yeah.
still, if that something like that came up, that'd be a huge problem.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it, once it starts hitting things, but it's going to hit things and knock them down. You know, it's
And then
gonna-
those are going to hit other things. So,
yeah, and that debris is going to hit other things. So, you think of stuff like that too, structural things like that that have happened in the past. The tide is the biggest thing in terms of.
And we always
really-
talk about too in our forecast. We also what's fascinating is that it doesn't have to be a hurricane. I mean, this list.
Was that the storm actually sat over the top of us for I believe 3 high tide cycles.
And it just
so
piled
a day
up
and
the
a
water. It
half.
just piled
so
up the
it
water.
wasn't
Yeah.
moving through.
Yeah.
It sat over the top of us.
Yeah.
So the high tide came up, but low tides didn't really drop on down all that much.
Yeah,
The
it stayed
next high
elevated.
tide
Yep, it stayed
was,
elevated.
was
Yep.
coming up even higher.
Which
Yeah.
is what's different from the '09 nor'easter, because that we went through several tidal cycles with that, but at least it went down and came back up
Yeah.
again.
Down and
But
went
still,
back.
it was
Yeah.
still a lot for I think it was 2 days or something. It sat off the coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick little break here, and then when we come back, let's talk about the behind the scenes of actually producing a special
Yeah.
here. A little bit about what goes into that. That's why we've got Bob here to talk us through that. So we're going to take a quick little break, and then we'll be right back in just a few. All right, how's everyone doing? We're back.
Doing well.
Doing well.
Doing well.
We're
So
back.
putting together a hurricane special, you have all the elements. Of course, everyone wants to know what the forecast is going to be. We want to look at some of the maybe past storms, but how do you put that together?
Well, we talk about the outlook and everything, and we certainly do these a couple times a year because they do get tweaked as the season goes along and whatnot. But you have to not just make it scientific; you also have to make it interesting, and that's what's really cool about the history that Don did, and talking about the beach erosion, which Brian put together very nicely, and just talking about all the things like with that Ocean View thing. So how does that happen with beach erosion? You also have things like Jeremy talked about the formation of hurricanes. A lot of people don't understand. It's like it just doesn't come out of nowhere.
Right.
It's out there somewhere as something when it starts, but then it can get very nasty very quickly. Don also talked about intensification of storms. Now climate change is playing a huge factor with that. But overall, it's like you want to make it visually appealing. You want to make it informative. My partner in crime on this, Chris Wynn, who's a photographer editor here, also he co-produces with me, and he just did such a good job with trying to catch the tone of everything with the show. It's like we can enjoy what we have here with our beaches and our shorelines, but there's also a be aware sort of thing with, yes, we don't get hit that often here. When we do, it doesn't need to be a direct hit. It doesn't, it can just skirt by us and still cause a lot of issues.
Doesn't even have to rain.
Right, right. I mean, yeah, around here, it's like you can get the moon can cause the tides to go up.
Yeah.
And
Always
cause
does.
problems.
Always
So,
does.
yeah. So, so it's kind of a, I don't want to call it a mishmash of things, but there are a lot of different elements that went into producing this. And it really, when it came together, it was awesome.
Plus, you're herding cats.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
for sure.
Five
All 5 of us.
meteorologists.
Five
Yeah.
meteorologists.
All working different schedules.
5 meteorologists,
You gotta put up
different
with me.
schedules. Yeah, well, that's we'll talk offline about that. But no, 5 meteorologists, a photographer. We've got to get time on our schedules. We want to make sure that everything looks good and focus in on certain things. And then you just want to make it special too, because it's like you want to make it kind of
You want to make it look cool.
Yeah,
you want to make it look
cool.
cool. You know, we're putting it. Yep, exactly that.
We
want to make it look. You want to make it look cool. It's like how we're putting together a mini movie, a mini documentary,
Right.
and we want to make that unique. And I think what's cool about your job, Bob, and being a producer is when we call them in the news stacking a show, because you're stacking topics and stories on top of each other, but that whole stack is telling a story in itself from start to finish here. So there was an order to that. It was like trying to make a playlist. You can't jump from one genre to the next. You need something in between to help
and
flow along.
that's the trick about doing a special as compared to doing a newscast, where you have a whole bunch of stories that you want to flow, but this is one topic. It's about hurricanes. What do we need to know first? Where do we start? We started with hurricane formation because
That's
you
how
start at the
hurricanes
beginning.
start. Yeah, at the beginning.
So yeah, there's a trick to it. Plus, you also have to stay within time limits.
Yes, you
So
do. We all
we're
know
sitting
about
here-
that.
Yeah, we're
How
saying,
long- how
yeah,
long
these-
is the
these-
special?
It's a half-hour special.
kidding.
It felt longer until we cut it down a little
Sure, of
bit,
course.
but we didn't cut out anything that was necessary. You know?
It's
So
and
that's-
there were so many things included in there. Like our pieces were several minutes long, so
Yes.
we had the luxury of being able to include specific details. And we had an interview with the National Hurricane Center, Deputy Director of the National Hurricane Center, which was kind of, hey, that's the pro. You know, I mean, they're pros.
Yes.
You know, they give Don a run for his money.
I can't hold a candle to these people. These people have been studying tropical meteorology.
And the progress
for
of the
their
cone
lives.
has just been insane. The progress of the forecast cone, how they gather the data, it's just been incredible. So it's really cool that they make themselves available for us to interview them and pick their brains as we get closer and closer to hurricane season.
Well, and part of what you did was, we one of the stories we put in there was nothing is an exact science when it comes to meteorology or weather or anything
An
like
exact
that.
science, yep.
So yes, sometimes there are tweaks that have to go along the way, but I think that your piece that runs in the show did a very good job at pulling back the curtain a little bit
Yeah.
on. Yeah, it's not exact, but it's getting more exact as time goes on.
And what's tough now is, I mean, we are all so used to getting information so instantly, and we kind of are losing our patience. And I don't know if people have now patience for something that's beyond 7 days out, and they want an answer for it. And it's like there is no exact anscer for that, especially with hurricanes.
Sometimes
with tracking tropical
to get
systems.
here, it takes 2 weeks for a storm to form.
yeah.
To get
Well,
here.
the thing about it is, the National Hurricane Center people actually know a great deal about the lay of the land here. If you ask them something about, and say, "Oh yeah, Virginia Beach has Lynnhaven Inlet,"
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they know the
Yeah,
geography.
they know it. Yeah.
But the thing about it is, the Hurricane Center is the big place. They got the big general information, and then once we get within about 24 hours of it coming close to our area, and it
36,
does look
24
like,
hours,
then we start, and it's moving on into our area. Then we start focusing in on us. We don't
Yeah.
focus so much on what the National Hurricane Center has to say,
Right.
because now it's the kind of thing where we know where everything is.
Yep.
We
Yes.
know-
Turns into that weather forecast.
yeah,
You
it
break
turns
down
into
just a
local
regular
weather
forecast.
forecast, and we know where all the bays and inlets are, and with the wind and what the tide is doing with the hurricane, then it becomes a really, really fine tuning of forecast
Yep.
as it draws on into
And
the
when
area.
it draws in close like that, it serves as a reminder to use the forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center when we're talking several days in advance to just paint the broad picture. But what they kind of alluded to was a challenge is that a lot of folks in society use that as the forecast of impacts of everything.
Yeah.
And when you get in that 36-hour, 24-hour window, Don, like you mentioned, the cone is just saying, hey, here's where the center of the storm's going. It's not going to show
You're just
the threats of
following it.
flooding.
Right.
You're just
Yeah,
following
and-
it at that point.
Yeah.
So
And we're nowcasting at that
and then
point.
we're
Yeah,
So
exactly.
So-
it's a reminder when it gets in that small window. It's like, okay, like at this point, it's like,
Yeah,
who cares about the
nowcast-
cone? Who
that-
cares about the cone? What's
Explain
the forecast?
nowcasting.
Yeah,
We
so-
understand.
Yeah.
So what you see now is what we're kind of using as our baseline, and then we're trying to figure out what's going to happen as it goes into
Yes.
the future. I remember a couple of storms ago, Don, we had one of our reporters in Elizabeth City standing near the river, and all of the water drained out of the river because of the wind that was pushing in out of the north. And you made a graphic real quick on the fly. showing that the wind direction is going to change and that water that would rush back in. So kind of as a warning, don't go running into the river looking for coins and things because the water is going to come rushing back in as the wind changes direction. That's one example. Another example could just simply be where we see the rain that's training over an area and we start to get a risk for flooding. That can occur too.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, too, every hurricane is different. When it moves on in, we may think, somebody else may think, oh, okay, well, it looks like it's going to do this, just like such and such past hurricane. Each one of them has
They're all
surprises.
different,
I can remember a little storm, not that big a storm. It was a tropical storm, Isaias.
Yep.
I thought I'd never have to say that again.
Hey, well, you nailed it.
Well, the name wasn't recycled too, or wasn't retired, by the way,
No.
too.
No,
It'll be back.
It'll come back.
Anyway, it was not a particularly strong tropical storm. Yeah, we knew we'd get some trouble out of it, but nothing real big. I can remember having a meeting with management and saying, okay, well, we'll probably get some tornado warnings, but they probably won't be all that many. In rare, somewhat rare cases, it's not unheard of. Not rare, but a little bit unusual. You sometimes get swarms of EF0 tornadoes.
Yes.
So I said, chill, we'll probably be okay. Probably won't be swarms. So what did we get? Swarms.
Yep.
So that evening we got just tornado warnings like crazy
People
and
in downtown-
damage.
That one downtown Suffolk made a lot of,
Yep.
caused
And
a
there was,
lot of damage.
wasn't there a couple in Norfolk that situation as well, or at least there's tree damage because I followed that storm up I-95. That was right before I was moving here, and I was touring some homes with the realtor, realtor.
Realtor.
Realtor. There we go. I know that's a big one. And driving around
I know
town.
people say realtor.
It's a
An
realtor.
extra letter there.
Sorry.
It's realtor.
But driving around the area was my first look at the area, and I was, look at all these trees down, you know. And I was just because I was watching all the warnings about 12 hours behind him driving up I-95.
When you
Wow,
talk
look
about
at all
things like
this.
trees down, there was nothing worse with trees down than Isabel because it had been such a rainy summer, and then Isabel came through, and even though that was only a tropical storm, a high-end tropical storm, I think when it finally got here,
Yes.
but it still caused so much damage.
Well, the thing about it was that the water came up at around 8:30 in the morning with Isabel, and it just didn't go down all day. So it was all day with these trees with their roots in mud.
Yep.
In thin mud, and that
Saturated soil.
wind, that wind stayed up all day, and it did peak as the eye of the storm, or what was left of the center of the storm, moved on by to the southwest toward Emporia. As it moved toward Emporia, it started really picking up in terms of the strongest
And just
winds.
the path of it, you look, it's the right side of the system, the
Yep.
right front quadrant, the winds and the direction of them were just a perfect alignment, funneling into the bay, funneling up the sound of the Albemarle Sound, and just kind of congealed into the area. So it was just the way and the direction of that was. I mean, this wasn't landfalling in Norfolk or landfalling in Hampton. It was just to our south, but the direction it came in with the alignment of the winds was just kind of a perfect recipe for a flooding like that. Flood surge
Plus the
event.
thing about it was that with a storm that was as strong as that, which is not that strong,
Right?
you know,
At
you
that
wouldn't
point,
expect-
yeah.
you wouldn't expect tides to be as high as they were.
and they got high.
They
got
got
up.
real high, but the thing about it was that the storm itself had been much, much stronger the day before, so a lot of residual rise in tidal height was flowing along out ahead of it. And plus we had really, and on that map there, and I can't reach over and show you the map, but anyway, we have a lot of southeast facing inlets. The James River, the York River, the Rappahannock River, all of the rivers right along the north side of the Albemarle Sound, all of these rivers face to the southeast. And that's where we had the strongest flow of water and wind. So it really did a number on lots of these rivers.
Pocosin, for example, got really nailed by
Yeah.
that.
Pocosin, if you look up what the meaning is, it's a Native American word. You know what
Okay.
it is?
No.
Pocosin?
Yeah.
Big swamp.
Wow,
swamp.
and
Yeah.
they got swamped.
Yeah.
At,
Yeah.
That's swamp.
Isabel.
That's
They
what,
got
that's what
swamped.
Pocosin means.
Didn't know
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Perquimans County. You know what the Native American word for that is?
No.
Land of beautiful women.
Okay.
Alrighty.
That's much better. Isn't
All
it?
right. Yeah.
That's much better.
Better than
on,
swamp,
that,
yeah.
on that note, let's take
Instead of big
let's-
swamp.
On that note, let's take a quick little break. When we come back, we'll just talk about our general ideas about hurricane season moving forward this season.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, we're all back here. We're having a good time. Hey, it's not all that often we get to all hang out like this, so we're here having a good time.
Missing a couple of people, but
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
but and many people want to know what does hurricane season look like this year? How many storms we're going to get? Is it going to hit my house on October, 12th?
we don't know.
We don't know.
We don't
Even
know.
the
We don't know.
Even the
That's
National
it.
Hurricane Center, because that was
Yes.
my question. He said, "Well, all it takes is one storm," and
Yep.
he said, "I'm going to fire up my generator
Yep,
this
that's it.
weekend and make sure everything's ready to
Yeah.
go." So
It's kind of one of those situations. It's like asking if the lasagna tastes good when it hasn't even been made yet, and we don't even know if it's going to be cooked in your kitchen.
is lasagna better the day it comes out of the oven, or is it better the next day after it's been sitting in the
Leftover.
fridge?
One
I
day
would
later.
agree with
I
that,
always
yeah.
say
Me
it's
too.
one day later
I do.
because
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
congealed together
Yes.
and kind of sticks together
Yeah.
here.
Okay,
So
sorry.
the long story, to make a long story short, just be prepared. You know what I mean? You get set up for the rest of hurricane season. You don't have to care about what's going on in the Atlantic. If there's a storm over there, whatever. You just kind of look at the forecast from National Hurricane Center. Like, okay, that's going to be maybe a fish storm. I'll check back in 4 or 5 days from now. It's like, okay, this one looks a little dicey. Let me watch it for a couple days. Okay, it's coming up in our neck of the woods. I got my hurricane kit ready to go. I know what I need to do or where I have to go if things get a little bit spooky,
one-
and then you could take some action.
One thing that I want to bring up that I remember from Isabel, lots of people evacuated and they did not have to. Are we running short on time?
We're all right.
We're
We got a
okay.
couple minutes.
Lots of people evacuated and they didn't need to. Like people up in Williamsburg. You're high and dry there.
Yeah.
Yorktown, you're not.
Different story.
Along the York
Yeah.
River,
Right.
Yep.
you had big problems there. Along the James River, we did. Any river was open to the southeast. But don't evacuate unless you're told to.
Right.
So if you're going to be high and dry, if you're not really near any kind of a water source, a creek or an inlet that connects to the Chesapeake Bay and the ocean, stay tight unless they tell you to evacuate. Because you're going to be a lot safer, a lot better protecting your home and your property and not being out on the road, a crowded road,
Yeah,
and making the road more crowded yourself.
Yeah.
So be prepared to ride it out. Most of us should be prepared to ride it out in our own home, on the first floor of our own home, but not upstairs. There's too much wind up there.
And when we're in the midst of the storm, at that point, the dangers could be for flash flooding from the heavy rain or for tornadoes,
Yeah.
depending on what part of the storm is nearby, or tidal flooding. But that's kind of a slower process,
Yeah.
too. So we can kind of predict. We know the time the tide's going to happen. We may not know the specific height. We can get a general idea on how high it might be.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that we always have to remember when we get into the storm, when it's on top of us, because I know there's some that are very nervous when we have hurricanes or chances for severe weather. During that time, we'll let you know if we're seeing tornadoes, if we're seeing changes to that forecast for the tide, so we can keep you safe.
And rainfall amounts and all that kind
All
of
that.
stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Know what you need with you. Know your evacuation zone. Those are two
If
of the
you
most
have to
important things.
evacuate.
Yes, if you do.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
you should still know your
Just
zone
know
anyway.
it anyway.
Know your flood
Yeah.
zone.
Flood zone, know your
Yep.
flood
Yeah.
zone, your evac zone, like you said, and what you need.
And the thing is, with climate change, those zones keep changing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they
won't
update those maps.
They won't change that fast, but they will change by the end of. What are you guys like? You're in your 20s. You're
22.
your early 20s.
30s, yeah.
I'm in my 90s.
Yes, Don and I are the old guys.
Well, I'm a lot older. but by the end of your lives, those zones will change. By the end of my life, I got 2 weeks.
Okay, we're not going to leave it at that. Thanks for watching, everybody.
But the most important thing is watch the show, learn from it, and you'll just see a whole lot of cool stuff.
And
too.
you know the answers to this. Well, where can we watch it?
We can watch it on WAVY Plus.
Is it available now?
It will be available.
Should
Yes,
be
it is
available
available
right
now.
now.
Yes,
Yeah.
it will be on demand all season long. We also have some broadcasts that we'll make sure to put up for you
on the
that
actual
happen over the
television.
weekend. On WAVY, on Fox 43, and on CW. We'll post those later in the week, and yeah. But we'll keep
that's
reviewing
the
this stuff too.
Great part about this WAVY Plus app is that when things get put out there and they go, they debut a new episode, then they're on demand. And
Yes.
you could just
Yes.
go click them when you want to watch it when you can watch it, which is awesome for a hurricane special like this. You can watch it now, and then when hurricane season starts up, watch it again.
Put it
Or
on
like,
repeat.
Put it on repeat.
When
Yep.
sun-
Loop
yeah,
it in the
when-
background.
when-
Loop
and
it
when it
back,
gets
yeah.
when it gets close, watch
Yep,
again.
there you go.
So.
Yeah.
Good refresher.
Good
So
stuff.
That's what we have for this week on Beyond the Forecast. Next week, we're going to be talking to an astrophotographer about taking images of galaxies. So, yes, the fun stuff keeps coming.
Somebody's already excited.
Oh, yeah. Hurricane season begins, we know, in just a couple of weeks on June 1st. So we'll keep you up to date as hurricane season starts and as it concludes. Thanks for joining us.